Answer the questions about the graph. Here we have a graph that's showing download speeds. On the bottom axis is time in hours, and on the y-axis we have megabits per second, a unit by which download speeds are measured. Question number 1. At what time was the megabits per second at 10? To answer this question, we take the given information and find at what time this happens. To use the graph, we come and we find 10 megabits on the graph, and we track that till the graph crosses at 10 and find at what time this occurred. We see here that at time equals 2 hours, the megabits per second was the value of 10. At 2 hours, the megabits per second was 10. Question number 2. At what time was the megabits per second at 45? Once again, we come to the megabits per second side, find 45, and track 45 to see when it crosses the graph. Here we see that the graph never crosses 45. In fact, the download speed was never higher than 40 megabits per second at any time during the measurements. So to answer this question, we would say that the megabits per second was never 45. I'll give you a moment to answer these final two questions, where now you will know the time and you will find the megabits per second. Let's check your answers. Problem number 3. What was the megabits per second after 3 hours of measuring? Starting now with the time measurement at 3 hours, tracking up the graph at 3 hours shows a reading of 30 megabits per second. At 3 hours, the megabits per second was 30. Problem number 4. What was the megabits per second after 4.5 or 4.5 hours of measuring? Starting out by tracking at 4.5 hours, we see that the graph never gets to 4.5 hours. In fact, it looks like all measurements stop at about 4 hours. So to answer problem number 4, we would say the megabits per second was not recorded beyond 4 hours. Students, you already know how to answer questions about a graph when the information is available. In this lesson, we will use the real-world example to explain the domain and range.